because while for other properties, residential, commercial, industrial, it's supposed to be the value as of January 1, 2009. For ag property, we look at data over a 5-year period, 5 years ago, and we average data over that 5-year period. So the value for a farm is not going to be anywhere near the present, it's not going to be anywhere near the market value because that's not assessed that way, but it's not going to be anywhere near the current income producing value either because we're using data that's 5 years old to generate it. So they get data from Iowa State on crop prices, expenses, crop yields, all these sorts of things, plug them into a formula, and then Department of Revenue does this formula, and it's going to spit out total agricultural value in a county because they'll look at the total acres of ag land in the county, how much is in corn, how much is in oats, so forth. And the Department of Revenue will tell each assessor, okay, you got $80 million worth of ag land in your county. Now it's your job to go spread that out to the different farms. So once that's done, the assessor will take that number and go out to the different farms and spread the value based on the quality of the cropland in his individual county. So that's a two-step process. Department of Revenue does the formula, the assessor spreads the value out. In 2007, which was the last year that we have values for ag available, the assessed value of agricultural property is about 25% of what it's selling for these days. I think the last survey that I saw said the market value of ag property is actually coming down a little bit, but it had been going up, double-digit percents for a number of years now. And so the market value the assessed value had not. So the assessed value lags well behind the market value. And actually that's what this next graph is supposed to show. That blue line with the diamonds on it is the market value of ag property since the late 1970s. And you see ever since the late 80s it's been going up, but dramatically going up since 2001. That, I think it's a black line with triangles on it, that is the productivity value of ag property. Excuse me, the black line at the bottom with the squares, that's the productivity value of ag property, which is the assessed value. So if you look at that, it's been pretty flat over the last 30 years almost. You've got the market value kind of going up and down, and now it's just been spiking in the last 10 years or so. Kind of one of the main reasons to go to this productivity formula is because the market value of ag land was fluctuating so much. Moving to a productivity formula and looking at the income for farms when putting a value on them keeps the value steadier. So taxpayers and governing bodies that collect property taxes don't have to worry from year to year that there's going to be too much of an increase or decrease in the market value of the ag land. One more slide on this, and this is just going to show you the mix of the property tax base in Iowa, how much is in certain classes. This is the current fiscal year, and there's about $110 billion of total taxable value. Almost half of it is in residential. About 21% is in agricultural property, 24% is commercial, and then just about 8% in industrial property and utilities, railroads, and other type of property. But this value is taxable value now. This graph is taxable value, not assessed value. Okay, let's talk about equalization, and then we'll finish assessed value and take some questions. I think I covered some of this earlier. Equalization it does every other year. It's that Department of Revenue kind of double checking the assessor. They do their own study, see if the assessor's value are within 5% of what the Department of Revenue says. And if you're within 5%, the department leaves you alone. If you're not within 5%, they give you an order. And the whole point of equalization is to make sure that the assessor in Des Moines County is assessing property the same way as the assessor in Jefferson County. Some state money, particularly in school aid formula, is distributed across the state based on assessed valuation. So one reason for doing this is to make sure that it's is that property is being treated equally no matter where you're at in the state, so that school districts in Burlington aren't getting more money than they should compared to school districts in a different county, for example. So the state has an interest in making sure that assessors are doing things similarly all over the state. If you get an equalization order on the next slide, the order, again, much like the rollback, is not going to apply to an individual property. I mean, I'm not going to get an order for my house that says increase the value by 10%. The department is going to look at all the property within a class within a county. So they'll look at all the residential property in Des Moines County, compare that to their study of residential property in Des Moines County, and if, say, it's 10% low, if the assessor is only valuing property at 90% of what the department thinks that should be, then Des Moines County residential property will get an order of 10%. Now that usually means that all residential property in Des Moines County will have their assessed value increased by 10% over what that assessment notice that the assessor sends out. So you'll get that notice in April, and then when these orders are issued in August, your assessed value will go up 10%. Now sometimes the assessor can kind of pick and choose how to apply that order. For example, if there was one area of the county that was really growing fast, or the values were growing more in that county, or in that area of the county, the assessor can apply all of the order to like that one neighborhood or that one area of the county, so that homes in that area of the county maybe get a 20% increase, while homes in the rest of the county wouldn't get any increase from the equalization order. If they want to do that, the assessor has to apply to the Department of Revenue and kind of show them data about why it's this particular area of the county that drove the equalization order. And it's much more common just to apply the blanket order across all properties in the county. Okay, that is how the assessors determine the assessed value of property. It starts in their hands, and then once they're done, the department may or may not issue an equalization order, but then that's it for assessed value. Once those orders come out in August, the assessed values are pretty close to final. Does anybody have any questions so far about what we've talked about? Next, we're going to move on to how we get from assessed value to taxable value. But before we do, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them now. Way in the back over there. It's the guy with a mic right behind you.
On residential property, is multiple housing category, how is your category on multiple housing compared to single and duplex?
I think everybody heard the question all right through the system, so I don't have to repeat that. There's an administrative rule in the Department of Revenue that says if you are 2 units or less, 2 separate living quarters or less, you're going to be classified as residential property. So duplexes are residential property, single-family homes are residential property, and it doesn't matter whether they're owner-occupied or whether they're rented out. If you've got a house that you own and you live there, or a duplex that you own and you live there, or if you've got a duplex that you rent out to two separate families, that's going to be residential property. But the minute you add a third separate living unit within, even if it's all within one structure, then you switch from residential to commercial property. So like big apartment buildings are going to be commercial property, but even say you've got a big old house maybe that's been converted into 4 separate living quarters, that's going to be commercial property as well. And that matters because, as we'll see eventually, when you go from residential property to commercial property, your tax bill more than doubles, just like that. So there was actually a Supreme Court case that was just decided, I think, in the spring sometime, by an apartment owner in Des Moines who said, hey, look, this isn't fair. You're taxing me as a commercial property when I've got people living here. You know, they're residing here. It ought to be residential property. And he lost. So the law was upheld, and he can still be taxed as commercial property. Now, I'm glad you brought that up because this brings up kind of a dispute. It's an ongoing dispute between what's called apartments and condominiums.